more great conversations and content coming your way. Please like and subscribe, hang out, be part of all of the fun on a consistent basis. Yeah, that's it. Now here's my conversation with Cameron Kasky. Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Jessica Tarlov, and my guest today is Cameron Kasky. He's spent years as an activist and advocate for Never Again MSD, fighting for gun reforms after surviving the 2018 shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. You can find him contributing all over the place. Love his pod on the Bulwark with Tim Miller, also goes on MSNBC, and I'm so glad to have him with me here. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, you're excited because there's someone in your family that likes the podcast, right? Isn't that what you told me? I love that.
Well, it's also like my Bulwark podcast is on hiatus right now. So doing video calls with self-identified political moderates is something that I just miss. Like I'm waking up in the morning and being like, I'm just talking to all these lefties all day about their radical Molotov cocktail throwing agendas. And I need more, Tim Miller action in my day.
I mean, we all need more Tim Miller in our day. I'm excited. I'm actually going to be on a panel with Tim tomorrow, and I'm going to do the Bulwark pod with him. You guys have a studio in DC, which I did not know.
We do have a studio. We have a beautiful studio.
I'm sure it'll be fancy and lovely. But I think that's a great place to start, that you're hearing from a lot of the socialist faction of the party, which is definitely alive and well, especially reflected in what happened here in New York City. But what were your big takeaways from election night overall?
Well, my biggest takeaway was something that fortunately a lot of people saw, which is we had someone who was running as a game-changing shaker like Zohran, someone who said we are going to go in and test the system, push it past its limits and do something new. And then we had Spanberger, a moderate CIA agent who was running on an agenda that was so not left-wing that she actually took the time to slam Zohran on the day of her election, which, I didn't think that was entirely necessary, but it sends a message, I hope, to Democrats across the board that is, we have a big tent and we have room for all sorts of different types of politics. A Spanberger does not look like a Mamdani. And yet both of them delivered big wins for the Democratic Party, which should tell us, hey, we don't need to run the same types of people in every single race. We can run the people who are going to win, and we can run the people who are going to deliver, and that's actually a positive thing. And conservatives figured this out a while ago, right? You have far-right MAGA types running in areas where far-right MAGA types are going to be successful, and then you have the quote-unquote principled conservative types who frame themselves as a bit more moderate and a bit more reasonable. Mind you, they all bend the knee for Donald Trump as well, except for the occasional Massey. So the Democratic Party had a really great day because different types of Democrats won. And again, that's a very good thing.
Yeah, it does feel like this was the moment that the rhetoric got tested, because we've been talking about being a big tent party for a very long time, and then doing things like going after the one pro-life Democrat that we had, in the party, and like Henry Cuellar getting primaried, for instance, or dragging people for it. And I think it's, fitting. It was announced this morning, Nancy Pelosi is going to be retiring. And I want to talk to you about generational leadership changes. But something that Nancy Pelosi always did that I admired, and I think everybody did, since she's, the right and the left thinks that she's one of, if not the best Speaker of the House that they've seen, is she always told her caucus, you run your race. If you need to call me the devil, you call me the devil. If you want me to campaign with you, I will be by your side. And it felt like we embraced that mentality in this election. So Spanberger did her thing, Mamdani did his thing. And for Dems in swing seats like Tom Suozzi, he could come out and say, I endorse Andrew Cuomo. And then he congratulated Mamdani when it was over and he won. And that feels like a healthy place to be to win elections.
Well, it's all about how you go about it, because you also had Democrats who were smearing Mamdani as an anti-Semite, which I found incredibly inappropriate. They would talk about how they were concerned about certain things that Mamdani has said, but then they wouldn't identify those things. They wouldn't quote the things that Mamdani had said that they were offended by or that they thought were harmful. And I thought that it was not only unproductive, but Islamophobic for them to go out and say, well, some of his rhetoric to me is dangerous and violent. It's like, okay, name it, call it out, Don't just say, we don't like these things that he said. Tell us what he said, why it's wrong, why you disagree, and how we ought to move forward. And I thought that was incredibly inappropriate. But another thing that I noticed on election day was something that I'd been saying for a while, and it was thrilled to see it materialize, which is that young dudes are coming back. All
Mm-hmm.
right. We thought we lost them forever.
You're back, baby.
Woke is back. Everybody's putting their pronouns back in their emails. It's extremely exciting.
I hope not.
I saw an exit poll that showed Spanberger had young men up by 14 points. That is not margin of error. That is double digits. And it's really, really great to see because, I mean, Mamdani obviously obliterated with young dudes, but in New York, spoiler alert, is not a Virginia. And a woman who is trailblazing the way that a Spanberger or a Cheryl did, winning with young dudes. Look, again, I said it the second I started hearing the friends of mine who might not have been explicitly MAGA, but were definitely a little bit Trump friendlier than I certainly am. When I started hearing them say, wait a second, is this administration significantly more damaging than maybe we had been led to believe? I was telling people and they didn't believe me. I was saying young dudes are bringing woke back. Woke DEI is going to be back in just a couple of years, and Gen Z dudes will have been part of that change. And of course, in these elections that we saw this week, and also across the board, young women were, as they always are, at the center of liberal and progressive change. Young women have always been just such a bastion of that. But dudes are back.
If you're enjoying our conversation, please subscribe to the Raging Moderates YouTube channel so you hear more, because we've always got more.
We're coming back. I just talked to every guy in my generation, and all of them said, we're ready to go woke again.
Okay. I mean, I sense obviously that there's a bit of levity to the way that you're presenting it, but I want to dig in a little bit more to that because I was very excited, obviously, to see the Gen Z vote return. I mean, the margin with women was absolutely massive, and they had been Trump curious in the 2024 election. You know, Kamala Harris did not do as well as Biden or previous nominees. But, you know, when you say woke and DEI are back, pronouns in your emails, et cetera, I know that that part of it is a joke, but how much do you think that bringing them back into the fold was rooted in the fact that these elections were not about cultural issues? Like these were affordability elections, right? These were healthcare elections, you know, the kitchen table bread and butter issues. Or do you think that the party is still flirting with kind of the left cultural issues that spelled disaster for us in 2024?
I think two things can be true. As it pertains to the woke stuff, I think that the Democrats did have a woke issue, but the woke issue was acting like it's a problem and dancing around it and trying to posture it in a way that could be more palatable for people. The way that I approach woke stuff and culture issues is I say, yep, grow up. Welcome to the adult world. Part of the adult world is using positive and inclusive language that makes sure everybody feels accounted for. That is a good thing. Stop freaking out about it. I saw a lot of Democrats make a lot of apologies for it and say, no, yeah, we're using socially inclusive language, but it's like, no, get rid of the but. All right. That's what we do. It might make you uncomfortable. That's okay. When you become an adult, you're going to deal with concepts that might be a little bit confusing to you. You'll be fine. All right. If you're a young dude and you think that woke has gone too far, get over it. That's my message about that. As for the affordability stuff, look, I mean, Zohran's effect, there's so many people who talk about his victory and say, yeah, this really showed us that we need to do better at new media and make better digital videos. And like, look, you do need to meet people where they're at. But that was not the message from the campaign. The message from the campaign was, you will win if you are willing to say the system as it is not working for people, and therefore we need to go in and fundamentally change things to make your life better and to make it cheaper to be a person. And I think that Kamala Harris was presented with an impossible situation. She had to simultaneously explain that she was going to make new progressive change while also reinforcing this idea that people's lives were actually better because of the past 4 years of the Biden administration. I think that there were plenty of tremendous wins that came with the Biden administration, as well as some pretty severe shortcomings. But, you know, a lot of people's lives were not better after those 4 years. A lot of people's lives were more expensive and they were more difficult. And a lot of young people saw Kamala Harris. And instead of doing what I think she should have done, which is throw Joe Biden under the bus. And by the way, Joe Biden should have done what Nancy Pelosi would have done and said,
And
yup,
throwing himself.
do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, she had to balance. I'm going to do something new and fresh, but also everything's fine because we've had a great administration. It was a really tough situation. I completely blame Joe Biden. There were a lot of ways the campaign could have been better. But I think, again, if you look at the Zohran effect and if you look at all the different things that Democrats have been able to do to win, it is a winning strategy to go in and say, hey, the American political system has not been working for you. It has been working to make a very small group of people richer, and we need to change that. And Kamala's campaign versus Zohran's campaign are great examples of one person who is saying, let's maintain the status quo, and one person who is saying, it is so much harder to start and maintain a family because of the status quo, and therefore we need to change it.
Absolutely. I have a quick question on woke DEI, and then I want to loop back to something about Mamdani. But so you say, I say to my bros, who cares? Get with it. Like, this is how we talk. This is, you'll be fine. What do you, and I want to talk about maybe that you're going to run for Congress. What do you do about an issue like transgender women in women's sports? So this is an 80-20 issue. People saying that they don't think that transgender women should be in women's sports. Abigail Spanberger danced around it. She found a solution that worked because only 3% of people rank it as their top issue anyway, just saying that it should be up to the community to figure it out. But that's one of the key issues that the right seizes upon on the woke front.
Yeah, I think it's a key issue for the right because we let it be. It's an issue where Democrats, like all the stuff I was saying about woke, they give it credibility by acting like it is a credible thing to do. But I was talking to Tomi Lahren on her Fox Nation show, as one does.
As a Fox employee, I know all about it. Yep.
Like any 24-year-old theater kid, I was doing Tomi Lahren's Fox Nation show with her. And she was talking to me about how the trans women in sports thing has gotten out of control. And it was the day after the NCAA finals. And I said to Tommy, hey, by the way, the NCAA finals were last night. How many trans women made the team? And she said, well, that's not the point. And I said, no, it is the point, because you're saying the trans women are stealing these championships. And yet I didn't happen to see any trans women in the championship. Riley Gaines, when she came in 50th place in her swimming contest, she wasn't beat by 49 trans women. This is one of those issues that is so nothing that the Democrats look stupid for treating it like it is a serious thing. We need to treat unserious things like they are unserious. Communities should have the power to handle these issues, and it should be up to communities. And it's the people who complain about big government that think that the big government should be getting in the way of an individual's ability to pursue what they want, an individual's ability to pursue their gender identity and live as themselves. Why do you want the government involved with that? You act like the government being involved with the most basic human services is a bad thing. You want the government to go in and tell young women which of them can and cannot play sports. It's ridiculous. And I treat it like it is. And my friends who talk about it as if it's some issue, I say, find how many people whose lives this affects, because I don't know the exact statistic. There is a very small amount of people in this country who are trans. There is a very large amount of people in this country receiving SNAP benefits. There is a very large amount of people in this country who rely on certain government services that Republicans turn them against. I mean, that is one of the craziest things about what you've seen from this administration, is that there's a lot of Trump voters who are happy with Trump making certain cuts to things that they don't even realize they receive. A lot of people think that government is politics. They think that government and politics are the same thing. But most of government is not politics. Your trash getting picked up is government. When there is an electrical outage and somebody handles that, that is government. And it's important that we distinguish these two things from each other. So why do I say this in terms of the trans? I don't even want to call it issue. In terms of the trans conversation, well, there are places where the government has a responsibility to get involved, and there are places where the government needs to stay out. And if people say we need to keep politics out of our schools, this is a perfect example of that. We need to keep culture wars out of our schools.
Okay. Um, there will be more on that. On the Mamdani front, I mean, I don't want to get into a full debate about this, but as a Jewish New Yorker who has a lot of friends who feel that Mamdani has expressed anti-Semitic attitudes, throughout the past, and he got only 30% of the Jewish vote. So he got about 45% in the primary, and it dipped down to 30%, which is pretty terrible considering how many Jews there are in this city. I think that, people point to the comments about the laces of the NYPD's boots being, laced up by the IDF. His statement on the anniversary, even this year, of October 7th, a couple lines about the terrorist attack, and then going into, Israel is an apartheid state and is committing a genocide, standing shoulder to shoulder with Mahmoud Khalil, and not talking about the civil rights infringements that happened to Jewish kids on Columbia's campuses. I'm not saying that some of it isn't alarmist, and I think that Cuomo and the right forces, like politically right forces in the election, made it an Islamophobic campaign at the end, because when you show the Twin Towers being blown up, it takes away, all normal semblance of a conversation over this. But whether it's fair or not, he has a lot of work to do with the Jewish community, to make sure that they feel protected and safe in New York. And I hope that he's going to take that seriously.
Well, fortunately, it seems as though their administration is already preparing to be working with Jewish leaders in the community. I think it's very important to make Jewish people feel safe, which is why one of my primary goals in my career and in my future is to emphasize the dramatic rise you've seen in neo-Nazism in the past several years, especially in the past few months alone, especially after Charlie Kirk's assassination. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, there has been an unbelievable spike in Jew hatred, not
Mhm.
criticism of the state of Israel, not issues with what Netanyahu's government in its radical extremist way is doing, but pure Jew hatred associating all evil in this world with the Jewish people. And the problem that I have is that if you'd only followed organizations like the ADL or APAC or most other Jewish advocacy groups, you would not know just how bad the Jew hatred epidemic has gotten in this country, because these groups almost exclusively talk about anti-Semitism as it pertains to Israel-Palestine. But what they are turning a blind eye to, and there have been some more conversations after Tucker and Nick Fuentes, sure, but what they have largely been ignoring, because it does not pertain directly to the state of Israel, is just how much Jew hatred is thriving and growing online. So I have a lot of conversations with people who are concerned about Zohran, and candidly, I don't want to baby people. I say, listen, of the people in the primary, the Democratic primary in New York, there was not a candidate who pledged more of the city's money to combat specifically Jew hatred. And I am far more concerned with the mayor's action than I am with different things that a mayor has said over the years. Zohran's campaign has not run on anti-Semitism, and I am
Nope.
tired of fanning the flames of making people feel afraid. I think there's a lot of organizations that are counting on different people being afraid. They're counting on people feeling uncomfortable and feeling unsafe, because that's how these organizations operate. They want people to be looking for answers to a problem when what we need to be solving is an epidemic of hate that is far more complicated than what is happening on college campuses. It is far more complicated than what is happening when the most inflammatory people at a certain protest say a certain thing. Jew hate is all over the place. It is rooted in virtually every community, and it is grown by several different factors. What's going on with Zohran's campaign? It was a campaign of inclusion. It was a campaign of people standing together. And if we are going to communicate with Jewish New Yorkers about how we're going to find solutions moving forward, we need to do that together and not by dividing people.
It sounds like you might be ready to run for office. Jerry Nadler is retired. The 12th Congressional District is looking for applicants. You said if you were to throw your hat in the ring. I thought it was really interesting that the first thing you named is about fighting big tech, talking about abolishing ICE. So A, are you running? And B, what would a Cameron Kasky campaign look like?
Well, I filed. Unfortunately, you can't hide that. When you do it, people find out.
Wait, that's
Doesn't mean I'm doing it. It means I filed.
okay. All right,
Um,
you're playing around with me then. All right, what's happening here?
well, we are exploring our options. We formed an exploratory committee. Part of that was filing with the FEC. Fortunately, I have people to help me do that because, candidly, I don't know how to spell FEC. But we're taking a look at New York 12 and what issues are concerning people. And over the past couple years, I have had a shift in my views. I obviously, after surviving the school shooting and starting March for Our Lives in my house and fighting for gun reform and hearing from so many of our nation's leaders that my classmates and I were going to be the ones to make a change, I faced the reality that it's not that simple. And in this
Yeah.
country, making a change like stopping school shootings, not only does it not happen overnight, especially when it comes to guns, this is a country where obsession with firearms and weapons manufacturers is deeply rooted in our culture. And to be honest with you, to use like a Gen Z term, I crashed out. I did not handle the emotional experience of realizing that change is not very easy to make very well. And it's been almost 8 years since. And over that time, I've experienced everything from being completely dejected to seeing glimmers of hope to giving up once again. And of late, I have realized that when I promised people we would make a change, realized that we wouldn't be able to get that assault weapons ban that so many people were hoping for, and then gave up because I couldn't bring myself to tell people I wasn't going to let them down when I didn't believe that, I realized, oh, I have the opportunity to go in and not let them down, to go in and compete the way that they want to see me compete. And there's a lot of issues right now that I think require people who are emotionally invested in a way that I think individuals who are already part of the political system are not. I've worked in politics in one way or another. I've worked with Democrats on the Hill to get legislation passed. It would shock you, even if you're someone who's politically tapped in and is aware of this to a certain degree, it would shock you how few people truly believe in something. In politics, I know you know this, in media, like the amount of people who do not have beliefs, it's all careerism, will, I guess, not completely surprise you, but it is kind of
It's
remarkable.
disheartening. Yeah.
It's disheartening. And as somebody who's kind of just a guy, like as someone who has not spent X amount of time in politics, becoming cynical, playing this like it's some sort of chess game, I care a lot about the human element of a lot of these things because my young adult life started with me having the most human experiences you could possibly have of meeting different people who had lost family members, meeting people who had been shot, seeing them tear up while they talked to me, telling me their story. I realized that we do need people who care about the humanity of it all. We do need people who are invested. We need people who want to change things because I thought when the shooting happened that 17 of my classmates were murdered, 17 more were injured in spite of the American system. And I did not realize that these people were murdered because of the American system. The shooter at my high school had reports with the authorities over 40 times. He was carving swastikas into desk. He brought a fake knife to school and he tried to get sent to a behavioral facility. He requested it, but the school would not help him. The foster system did not help him. So when he was up for the death penalty, and I got a lot of shit from a lot of people in my community for saying that he shouldn't be murdered because I do not believe that the United States government should have the power to take a person's life. I got in a lot of trouble for it, but I said, listen, this one individual, no matter how evil they may be, we cannot act like exterminating them from the planet will get any justice for these issues because these issues are about our system. A 19-year-old who had dozens of reports with the police for dangerous behavior was able to walk into a Dick's Sporting Goods and buy a firearm, the creator of which said it was made for military use. That is America. The United States is why my classmates were killed. The shooter from my high school was simply an evil enough person to pull the trigger. So I have no love for the system. I don't believe in it. And I believe that you do need to work with people within that system to make change, but you also need to care. And I'm in a generation that is in student debt and graduating into a job market that is being decimated by the AI bubble, by big corporations merging and cutting all the extra jobs, cutting the fat just to drive up shareholder value. And when you can't get jobs like that, you're not going to be able to find jobs that have decent benefits. And if you don't have decent benefits and you age out of your parents' healthcare plan, what? You're 26 years old. And if you have a terrible day in your life where something awful happens to you, if you, God forbid, get a terminal illness, your financial future can be completely ruined. But meanwhile, in all these other countries, like in virtually all of the developed world, that's not a reality for people. It's the same thing as school shootings. People going into debt because they have cancer is something that people in any comparable country look at and say that's an American thing. School shootings, medical debt, these are American problems. And I believe that we need to use what we have in this country to solve them. So I want the people that I grew up with who are my age, who learned to code in college and now they don't have a job because coding is all being done by AI data centers that are causing a mental health crisis, destroying our environment, and destroying our job market. I want them to be able to get healthcare. I think they deserve it. I think that if we can spend over $1 trillion at the Pentagon, billions of dollars with ICE, hand out $10 billion contracts to Palantir, we can afford to make sure that Americans have healthcare. We can afford to solve a lot of our different issues. And that's important to me. Between us, not between us, between us and all of the people listening to this, my life was going just fine. I don't need politics. I'm not a political animal who will only survive if I am doing politics and rising up in politics. I have a lot of fun. I rather enjoy my non-political life. So I am getting involved with this if I decide to officially launch because of a moral compulsion, not my career trajectory. And I think we need more candidates across the board who are doing that.
Well, I think that you have a good pitch and stump speech ready to go if you do end up pulling, I'm not going to say pulling the trigger to someone who was in a school shooting. I am so sorry.
There's so much language like that.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started. There's so much non-school shooting survivor friendly language, but you know what? I'm reclaiming it. Okay. I'm taking it back.
So if you decide to pull the trigger, I will follow your campaign with great interest. Cameron, it was great to have you.
Thanks so much.